Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and you take time to listen into the podcast. I say it all the time and I will continue to say it. I really, really appreciate you for listening in. So it would be a big help for us if you go over, rate, subscribe, review, and do all the things to help us keep the podcast going. And I really would appreciate that. All right, all right. Now, today I'm talking with Rúna Bouius. And I want to tell you what she says. She says, this Icelandic trailblazer wasn't always a catalyst for leadership empowerment. She crushed it as an entrepreneur and CEO in her native Iceland before ditching the suit for a bigger and more purpose-driven mission, which is guiding leaders to become conscious leaders. She's a futurist, speaker, author, executive coach, and social change agent. And she's on a quest to build a better world, one empowered leader at a time. Welcome, Rúna Bouius.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So glad to have you here. All right, so now you heard me read a little bit of an introduction.
Right.
Why don't you tell us in your own words about you and the work you do?
Well, I want to start. You mentioned it. I am an accidental entrepreneur and CEO from Iceland. And that's where I spent the first 20 years of my career. But at the end of that period, I had my world literally crashed. I had a devastating loss, really loss on two levels. And that kind of put me in a space that I had to reflect on my life and see what I wanted to do. I had to ask that question, what's next? And what was next for me was to literally move with my two sons over the Atlantic Ocean. We landed in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I spent about a decade focusing on the boys, on being mom, first and foremost. And secondly, I attended apprenticeship. I call it my apprenticeship with various teachers and teachings, or leading to me having the finding passion with helping leaders cracking really the code of conscious leadership. So today I run a company called the True Power Institute. So I'm adding kind of the examination or exploration of power into the conversation. And that I know a lot of women are interested in that because we have been, what can I say? I don't want to say victims, but we have definitely had to live in a world that has tried to crush our power. And so I'm just very happy to be here with you. And
so glad you're here. And, sorry that those hard times brought you here, but we have the benefit of having you here now, now that you're moving in this new phase of your life. We appreciate that. All right, so you mentioned the term conscious leaders. Tell us what that means.
So a conscious leader is a leader who has become aware of his thoughts, his emotions, his actions, and the impact that has on the environment, on other people around them, and on the environment, on society that they live in. So it's leaders who kind of understand that there is two sides of leadership. There is the outer game of leadership, which are the competencies and skills that leaders learn, taking an MBA training and learning really on the job within organizations. And that's what most leaders focus on. But what I'm focusing on and trying to help leaders understand is the really foundation, the fundamentals of leadership is the inner game of leadership. And that's where we come into it's really expanding our consciousness to be able to take conscious actions and be responsible for how we show up in the world.
Yes. And I hear your passion when you talk about this. Do you feel like you have a sense of purpose in your work?
I do. And maybe leading to that, to explain that to you, I want to go back to that place in my story where I said I had a devastating loss in Iceland. And the first loss was I lost my husband. The second loss was that I lost my passion. I had been building my businesses for 20 years, and I had been incredibly passionate, waking up every morning excited and optimistic and driven. But at the end of that period, I just lost my mojo, and I didn't know what was going on with me. But I started to ask the question that you mentioned in the beginning, and that was, is this all there is, or is there more to life? And this started before my husband passed away. He had been sick for a while, but this happened before he passed away. So I decided to literally sell my businesses because I felt that I didn't want to be doing the same thing that I wasn't passionate about when I would be 60. And then my husband passed away. So I was really in a space of a new territory. My world had been had crashed really, and I had to rebuild it. And that was what I didn't know then, because I felt this lack of passion was like a hole in my heart. There was externally nothing wrong. I had a successful business, fabulous people working for me, fabulous clients and suppliers, but there was something missing. And now I know that something was purpose. So I literally left Iceland and my old life there to come to America to look for that purpose.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And that apprenticeship that I talked about, that decade while I was still focusing on raising my boys, but also in apprenticeship with various teachers, was literally giving myself time to find my purpose. And I did find it.
You did find it. Congratulations. And that was a big move, a really big move for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a big move, but it was, it could not be avoided. It was like my soul screaming for attention, screaming for me making changes and going on exploration and being courageous to really go into the unknown and see what wanted to emerge.
Yeah. And you talk about your soul screaming. Was there something, were there what I would call symptoms, either physically or emotionally or mentally, of your soul screaming?
Not physically, but I would say more emotionally. When I spoke about losing my mojo in Iceland, it was, I'm usually a very energetic person, very optimistic person, but I realized that I had started to put on an act when I would show up at work in the morning, because I was trying to hide from my people that I wasn't as happy or fulfilled as I had been. And of course, if you have a team that feels that you are in a bad space, you can't expect good things coming from them. So I was trying to keep up appearances, we could say, in order to keep everything going. But I realized that was not sustainable. And that's why I decided to just come clean and sell the business. I didn't tell them what was going on internally. I can tell them now, but they would not have understood at that time, because I didn't even know what was wrong.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a question mark. It was just a hole.
Yeah. And was there a moment where you knew, like, was there something that you remember around there? Was it like a defining moment, a clear kind of shift? You kind of felt like there was something going on. You said you didn't know what it was, but you weren't happy and you weren't fulfilled. Was there something that happened that you can pinpoint? Well, this was the actual time of the change.
Not while I was in Iceland, but after my husband passed away and I sold the business, I was invited to come to New Mexico to join two of my teachers who had become friends as well, and they were doing some training. And they invited me to come with the boys just for a few weeks in the summer of 95. And I did show up for the training. And while I was in that training, something happened. There was just a knowing that came over me that I needed to move. And I had thought, I knew I wanted to move away from Iceland, but I thought I would end up in England because that was close by. I had lived there before. It felt safe. But as I was going through this training that just knowing came over me that this is it. I need to be here to explore what this purpose is. And that's exactly what I did.
That interesting that you had a sense of knowing, and I'm saying that for people who are listening, because everybody has a different experience, but they might have some commonalities when they come to a point where they just know, even if
Yeah,
they're going through this period of what, there's something missing and I don't know what the next thing is. So I'm
right,
thinking that might be inspiring to someone who's listening now to hear that.
right, right. Yeah, it's a knowing without having a clue where you're going. But for me, I didn't go into fear about that. I was more excited and optimistic and kind of finding a new leash on life. Of course, I was grieving, and part of the training I was going through was to help me also to heal. But in that was also that new worlds were opening up to me as I was training in areas that I had never studied before. So there were just whole new worlds that opened up for me. And
Yeah.
I found that very exciting and very satisfying. So I just kept on. I followed the energy.
Yeah, good for you. And I can only imagine how, that grieving must have been for you to have the loss of your husband in that way. And it's interesting how sometimes we have these life shifts after these big losses in our lives.
Right. I think this I don't know what was happening astrologically for me, but with these two things happening around the same time, him literally leaving and me coming to the end of we could say my energy for doing what I had been doing. I think it's not an accident. I think somehow I must have orchestrated this opening for the next chapter in my life. And that's maybe sounds strange to orchestrate of course I didn't orchestrate the death of my husband, but for that to happen, for me to have to face that, I think I it was some kind of a what would be the English word for it? It was a turning point for me, that I was literally starting a new chapter.
Yeah, yeah. And now, do you feel like you're in your purpose? You're living your purpose now?
I am. I
What
am.
what do you attribute to that? What makes you know that you are in your purpose?
Because I never get tired or bored of it. I'm always excited, and I feel I'm being of service. Literally, I feel I'm here to, we could say, together with others, contribute to midwiving a new business paradigm that is based on a deeper level of consciousness, and helping people to understand their innate power, and in a way claim their power. And I call that true power. So I'm playing with talking to people about the external power, the career, we could say promotions, you get a new job, you get the corner office, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a power that really fuels your purpose. Because when we are bidding for power, we are going out of our comfort zone. And we need fuel to go to the next level, whatever that next level is. So we need a stronger engine in the belly, in a way. So very much of the work that I'm doing is helping people to let go of limitations and expand their view of who they are and why they are here, really, through their purpose. And I believe we all have a purpose. I believe our soul knows our purpose, but our ego, our personality doesn't. So the journey is, the ego needs to go on a journey to explore what that is. And in a way, I see it nearly like a detective game, trying to put together the pieces of your life experience to give you glimpses into what your true power is. And again, I think you know it when you really, really feel it, when it is on a feeling level, not on an intellectual level. So to me, finding your purpose is not something you decide like a goal. It really has to come from a deep place within you.
Yeah, yes, and I relate to that. My own understanding and definition of purpose is when you are really expressing who you really are,
Yeah, exactly.
true self, your best self, who you
Exactly.
really are. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
And it takes some, as you say, it takes some reflection and introspection to get there.
It's
Yeah,
a journey. It's not something you go to a weekend workshop and learn or read one book. It really is a process, and we have to be patient and with ourselves and with the process, and be curious.
yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
this podcast, as you know, is Leadership Purpose,
yeah,
and it's for what I call high achieving women.
yeah.
And here's my definition of high achieving women, because everyone probably has a different definition, maybe. All right, so what I mean by it, she's a high achieving woman if she is responsible, goal oriented, ambitious in a positive way. She's good at a couple of things. And because she's good at a couple of things, people come to her in her professional life and ask her for advice, whether it's related to the work that she's doing or not. They just come to her for advice.
Mm.
In her personal life, family, friends, community, people come to her for advice for any random thing because they see she's good at a couple of things. And so she's always supporting others.
Mhm.
And now she's found herself at the top of a career ladder and find herself saying, this is the wrong ladder.
Right,
What is this all about? And there must be more than this.
right.
And so I see you kind of recognizing this as I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
What would you say to that high achieving woman who is yearning for purpose? And what you said, your language about her soul may be screaming for it. What would you say to her?
Well, I would say that she needs to discern between, or we could say, start by thinking about what success means to her, and whether that is based on expectations from, say, her parents, from her education, from society in general, from her friends, from her, we could say, position that she has now claimed, uh, or whether that is coming from a deeper place where, which is just like you said, the definition of purpose, where when she is expressing truly who she is, her authentic self. And that's what I call true power, when you are literally able to claim your authentic self. And I think society really puts us in a box, and we allow society to put us in a box, and we often get stuck there. So we are looking for our purpose on one end, but we are not willing to let go of any of the, we could say, masks or identities that we have been holding and that we have really used to introduce ourselves. But we really need to start to ask that question, who am I and why am I here? Before we can really dive into that purpose, because through that exploration, you will find your purpose. But if you're not willing to get out of your comfort zone and do the work, and this is work, and if you're not willing to do the work, I think you will stay the same where you have been. So this takes courage. But I see more and more women doing this. And so I'm really encouraged, and I think that's a good thing, because I believe we need women, we need their wisdom, we need their special attributes to balance the, whether we call it business model or the environment in business that we have been in. We so desperately need a more holistic approach to leadership, and women play a huge part in that, but they only play a part if they come from their authentic self, not if they come from an imitation of how a successful male shows up in business.
Yes, yes, I really relate and to what you're saying. It really resonates with me and my own thinking. It's interesting. we haven't had this conversation before, but we're both on the same wavelength, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
We're just riding the same wavelength.
Right.
All right. Now, Runa, you've been so generous with your time. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to share um, before we tell people where they can get in touch with you and follow up with you?
Well, I just encourage women to be daring, to be bold, and to think big, because they have so much more power than they think they have, and they need to step out and claim that power.
I love that. That just wrapped it up so nicely in a bow. Well, thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom, your apparent wisdom and expertise. I really appreciate you for being here.
You're welcome.
Okay, everyone, I'd love to hear your response to the episode and see what you're talking about and thinking about. Head on over to social media and oh, now wait a minute. Before I tell you about mine, Runa, let's help tell people where they can get in touch with you.
Right, right. Well, a great place to start is to connect with me. Send me a connection request on LinkedIn and refer to the podcast. That's where you got to know me. And another place is my website, which is truepowerinstitute.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there, and you can send me a note. And it would be lovely to hear from you.
Okay, that's great. And where are you on LinkedIn? What's your?
Rúna Bouius.
Okay, great.
Rúna Bouius.
All right. And then tell us your website again.
truepowerinstitute.com.
Okay, and we'll be sure to put that in the show notes.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. All right. And now I say thank you. I was jumping ahead. All right, everyone. I'd love to hear from you. Why don't you head on over to the podcast website, Leadership Purpose Podcast, Leadership Purpose Podcast. I have a free resource for you if you are that person who is yearning for more meaning and purpose. I have a checklist to help you get started on your way. And if you're on LinkedIn already looking for Runa, I'll be there at Robin L. Owens, PhD, at Robin L. Owens, PhD. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin.